And then out of nowhere comes this crazy, you know, rave music, people dancing in films, there's a summer of love. In fighting in this middle of this rave with these fucking guys, we rushed them through the fire doors. And then in the car park, it was like the fucking Wild West. You know those guys? Yes. Well, they're putting balaclavas on and they're loading up machine guns in the car park. And I said, well, I can't really leave my rave. And he said, well, if you don't, these people are going to kill you. He said, I'm going to come back and shoot you. And he came back with a gun. I think he killed one of Dorman and he shot another one of them and wounded him. I thought there was something special about that film, right? But with all these films that I've made, every time I make a film, I think it's special, otherwise I wouldn't make it, right? And sometimes they're fucking great, sometimes they're mediocre, sometimes they're not. Because at the time, there was North, East, South, West, and they all wanted to kill each other. So you had all these crews and all these gangs. There was people getting raped, mugged, murdered, stabbed, shot, their houses burgled, their cars broken into. You know, you look at, you know, LA and you talk about Compton, you talk about the hood. That's what these places were like, right? You know, you walk around there, you are going to get turned over, and I'm going to do them with a fence. I was like, what? And literally went up to the fence, picked this fucking fence up, right? Went like that with it. And then as he did it, they all fucking rushed forward and he just ran out with, ah! He's just done them all with his fence. And they were lunatics. They were running around beating people up. Craig Rolfe injected that guy and fucking killed him. I mean, they were off key.
Hope you're enjoying our podcast. Here's a word from our sponsor, Up. And before this one even came in, Jen was already gagging to try this product, weren't you, Jen?
I was literally going to purchase it before they sent it, and they sent us 5 wonderful flavours. So today I'm going to sample the apple flavour.
And how it works is through the sense of smell. So instead of having a drink that's flavoured with all that rubbish in it, you are getting activated through the olfactory receptors in your nose, and you are thinking if there's flavours in the drink, but it's not, but it's like takes your senses to a whole new dimension.
And it's wild because you're not drinking disgusting fizzy drinks. So this is perfect for the gym.
And for Christmas, the new chocolate orange flavour is out. And if you go to the website, you can check out the Christmas bundles. This is at Up's website, link in the description box.
Oh, can you smell it?
Oh my God.
It's delicious, isn't it?
Isn't it? Oh, watering at the mouth.
Right, so I will show you how to use this simple pod. Is you just pop it over the nozzle here, and you lift it up till it naturally stops. Oh yes, try some of that. I like that you were desperate. Try some of that.
The flavour's intense as well, isn't it? Why do you think this would make the perfect Christmas gift, Jen?
Because you always overindulge over Christmas, and you know what it's like in the January period. You all want to lose weight.
Turkey burners at the gym.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this bottle is absolutely awesome. It's my new gym bottle, so thanks. Thanks, guys.
Link is in the description box below this video. Thank you for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast. Right, here we go. We have got Terry Stone. When I got released in 2007, mates were saying, you got to watch this movie, Rise of the Footsoldier. I've just listened to Terry's audiobook, and his real life stories parallel, perhaps not to the degree, but almost what was portrayed in Footsoldier. That's why perhaps he was such a good role for him. I mean, that bit, many of you have seen it. Shout out to Hammy, one of my best mates. He was one of the first to tell me about it. Well, you're beating the guy up, and he's like, burn him, and your face is just got that manic Clockwork Orange smile. You're looking down on the guy. It's brilliant. It's genius.
Would you know? Well, back in the day, obviously I was referred to as Terry Turbo then.
Terry Turbo,
and if anyone's wondering where
The Tony
where the
Tucker.
name Terry Turbo come from, I used to break dance as a kid. So I used to be in like UK rap music. I was a really bad break dancer. There was a movie called Breakdance the Movie, and you know, there was a guy in it called Turbo. So people used to call me Terry Turbo, which then became Turbo Terry, and that was the nickname. I had many punch ups at school over that name, and then I just embraced it. And then, you know, throughout I'd say probably from like 18 to 19 to 20, that period of time, there was a really bad recession, similar to what is happening in the world now, where the interest rates were high, people losing their jobs, business was going out of you know, business, and people were just looking for something to do, looking for somewhere to go. And then out of nowhere comes this crazy, you know, rave music, people dancing in films, there's a summer of love, people are taking ecstasy. You know, at the time I was boxing, I was running half marathons, I was like Captain Sensible. You know, the last thing I would ever entertain is taking any drugs. So when it come to people dancing in fields and taking drugs, I was always like, why are they doing that? You know, they're all junkies. You know, I was sort of like looked down, even though I lived on a council estate where there's a lot of people taking drugs, it was very just not me. And then, you know, my experiences of clubbing were sticky carpets, you know, getting drunk, trying to, you know, chat up a girl, having a fight, having a kebab, and then going home. That was, sometimes you were sick, right? But that was like a night out probably for most people in the 70s, 80s and early 90s. And then the rave scene come along, and I had all these, I lost my job. And I remember for about 6 months, everyone kept going about these raves. You got to come to the raves, you got to come to the raves. And I was like, I'm not going to the raves. People take drugs, blah, blah, blah. And one day my mate said, I'm going to Worthing to a club called Stearns. You should come. Oh, it's a fucking rave. I told you I want to go. Terry, you've got to come, right? It's the best fucking thing you've ever been to. Change your life. So I go to this rave. I walk in the door, and there's 3,000 people in this fucking rave. And it was in this like old, anyone who went to Stearns back in the day, it's like an old country manor on 3 floors. So I walked in there, and I think Cole Cox was playing.
Oh, yeah.
And at the time, he was doing 3 decks. He was scratching, he was mixing, he was doing all this stuff. And I was like, fucking hell, I've never seen, you know, normally it's a DJ going, pressing a button, going like that, pressing a button. It was like DJs, right, in the clubs, right? And there was always trouble. So I walk into this club, I'm seeing this DJ, I'm seeing all these people dancing. I'm like, oh, it's like lively in here. Then this girl comes up to me, she goes, come and have a dance with me. And she's grabbed me and took me on the dance floor. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I'm getting chatted up here. I fucking like this. And then I had guys come up to me, how you doing, mate? What's your name? Blah, blah. And I was like to my mate, everyone's so friendly in here. I said, it was like somebody opening that Pandora's box and you walking into this alternative reality and just going, wow, you know, where do I fucking sign? So obviously at the time I didn't realise it was because they was all off their heads. But the thing is, that was the taste. And when I come out of the club at 3, 4 in the morning, whatever time it finished, and this wasn't an illegal dance party. This was an actual licensed premises, and it was one of the most famous rave venues in the UK. And I remember walking out of this rave venue, and there was guys and girls giving out these flyers, and I looked at them and I was like, "Did you get paid for this?" And they went, "Yeah." I said, "You got any jobs?" Right? And then I literally got the guy's number, phoned him up. I said, "Look, I've got a load of my mates who go out raving. If you can get us in for free, and we come out and give out the flyers, will you pay us?" And he went, "Absolutely." And I said, "What'd you pay?" And he said, £10 a head. So I had like 20 mates. So I said, can you get 20 of us in? And he went, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "Can we go anywhere?" And he went, "Anywhere you want." So I said, "Great." So I phoned my mates up. I said, "Right." I said, "We can go out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on me, but you'll give the flyers out. Right, that's the deal. And I'm getting paid, but you're getting in for free. So you're saving you 20 quid. We're getting walked to the front of the queue." So they was all like, "Sweet, let's do it." So I then could come off the dole, because obviously now I'm earning, you know, what was big money then. You know, bear in mind, when I was working at McDonald's, which was my first job, I was on £2.65 an hour, right? So fast forward a couple of years, and I'm, you know, now got 20 people getting 200 quid a night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. So I'm earning £1,000 a week. So that, which was big money then. So I didn't always earn that. But then what I worked out pretty quickly was on the back of these flyers, there was no one where I was living selling tickets. But there's a lot of record shops selling tickets. So I've just rung all the promoters up and said, I'm giving out your flyers and promoting your events. Why don't you put me on the tickets out? And they was like, all right, we'll put you on the tickets out. So then I become a tickets out. So I was giving out flyers, selling the tickets, fast forward another year, 2 years. And then I was doing, I thought there's not a magazine representing the scene, right? So I come up with a really original name called The Scene Magazine, right? And it started off as I think it was like, so it was like a 16-page black and white magazine, which we were giving away for free. And the idea was we get advertisers to pay for it. So I rang up a few of the people, said, look, do you want to put your advert in? We're going to give these away for free. We're going to press up 10,000. And there was a couple of news articles in there. But then it grew really rapidly and it went up to 128 pages at one point. Now, bear in mind, when I left school, I got a grade 5 CSE. So I'm hardly qualified to be a magazine editor. But I think because it was so badly written, it was funny and it appealed to ravers. And we did, I mean, the pages in there, my mum was the agony aunt. So, like you used to have Dear Deirdre, where people write their problems. Well, people would write to my mum about their rave problems. And she had like this headscarf. Do you remember the glasses? They look like, nerd glass, really thick glasses, like on the side. And she had a cigarette in her mouth. She's like that. So it was hilarious, right?
Can you remember any of the rave problems that?
Well, it was just stupid things like I'd have to actually get the magazine. Bear in mind, we're talking about something that happened 25 years ago, right? So my mind's a little hazy, but it was just comical. It was a bit like Viz magazine for ravers, right? Or in America they had that Mad magazine, but it was that sort of funny thing. And then we did reviews of the club nights. We did interviews with DJs, but one of the funniest things was Dave Courtney, who you've interviewed. He used to do a column for us,
R.I.P.
called Dodgy Dave's Rave Page. and obviously back in the 90s, for anybody who doesn't know who Dave Courtney is, I'm sure you all will know who he is. He used to go out and he was a big clubbing guy. He used to like partying. So it would just basically be what he's been doing over that month. And obviously had some hilarious stories. And at one point, I don't know what happened, but he actually went to jail. And I said, oh, Dave, I'm going to have to get somebody else to do the thing while you're in jail. But he went, no, because we're doing Dodgy Dave's page from the inside. So it was like we had Dodgy Dave rave diaries, then we had Dodgy Dave's, jail diaries, which was really good fun. So that was all, part of that. And then one day someone said to me, oh, you're giving out a flyer, you're selling the tickets, you got the magazine, you put a rave on. I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And there was a song back in the day, which for any ravers will all remember it. And it was called One Nation Under a Groove. And I remember that song because when I first used to go raving in London, there used to be a thing called Breakfast Club. And when we was giving out flyers all night, obviously that was somewhere where it would start at 6 a.m. So you'd be giving out flyers all night, driving around London, going up Milton Keynes, and then you'd end up in this club and they'd play all Break for Love and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then that song would come on, One Nation Under a Groove. And I listened to the music and I was like, that's what I'm going to call my rave. So that was the birth of One Nation. And then 4 years after that, we did Gary's Nation. So, yeah, I never set out to be a club promoter, but I ended up obviously becoming one. And, when I first started off, it was lovely. It was fun. You put on an event, people turn up, you break even on one, you make a little bit of money on another, run a weekly club night, to get a little bit of money from that. But then I think when I started to get on people's radars before, the rave scene become legitimised, because back in the day when it started, it was people dancing in fields and it was mainly run by sort of football hooligans and gangsters and, unsavoury characters. And obviously, for them, it's like they were probably doing everything. It was a cash business. It was their security. They were probably selling drugs. They were probably just thinking, this is great. We can just make all. And some of these events, you were getting 35,000 people turning up in the field, paying £25. So if you were selling the drink, the drugs, and the tickets, I mean, they was probably earning millions. Maybe not. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe it's $500,000, but it was a lot of money, and it was all cash. And obviously, they got to a point when the Criminal Justice Bill was passed. They said, we don't want these raves anymore. And a lot of the people that I knew that were putting these raves on, they would put a rave on, make a load of money, and they'd go on a bender for a month or 2 months, and they'd be in hotels, they'd be with girls, they'd be taking drugs, they'd be partying. They'd run out of money. They go, right, put another rave on now. So when I got into it, I was always sort of like, this is a business, and I was probably naive. Because even though I was from a council estate and I boxed and, I wasn't a tough guy, but I could have a row, right? So I wasn't really that worried about going into London. But then when I started going into London, people said, you started hearing these horror stories where these Dorman had turned the promoter over and robbed all the money. You had these firms putting it on promoters, people getting kidnapped, tied up, all sorts of stuff. And someone said to me, look, you're 20 years old, you're a kid from Surrey, and, these people in London are saying, who's this kid from Surrey coming and taking their money? So you need to make sure you get some protection. So I went to Boots, but they didn't have any Durex in my size. But where we lived, I lived in Camberley, and I used to run a club in Aldershot for probably a couple of years called the Rhythm Station.
Aldershot's wild.
Well, it was the Wild West. And literally, when the guy said to me, I want you to run a rave, because they were the only club in the Thames Valley that had a 6 o'clock licence. So they approached me and they said, you're doing raves, you're a local kid, do you want to run this for us? Right? We'll put all the money up, you book all the DJs, and then what we'll do is we'll pay you so much per head, and then if we make any money, right, we'll pay you a share of the profit, and you can have free drinks all night, and have however many of your mates come in for free. So I said, all right, sweet. And he goes, why don't you pop down Saturday night, because that's the last night we're doing their normal club night. So I've gone in there. As I walk in, there's a fight, right? And I'm thinking, fucking hell, we're going to put on a rave here where people are meant to be nice and happy, and there's people fighting in this club, right? And I saw the doorman deal with it like really quickly, and I went and had a drink at the bar, and it was quite moody in there. And I said to the guy, I said, look, I'm going to have this drink and I'm going to go, but I'll see you next week. And as I'm walking out, this woman has been like thrown through the door, and then this guy has been thrown through the door, and they're both like on their ass on the pavement, right? And then he gets up and starts going, you fucking noise to this woman, like it was his wife. Right? And then she goes, you fucking, and he turns it back, and as he walks off, she took her fucking heel off, run up to him and just done him in the back of the head. And he had this stiletto hanging out of his head, right? And he's standing there going, did you just fucking hit me with your shoe? And they started fighting, like beating each other up. And I'm just like going, fucking hell, I can't, but what am I getting into here, right? And then the next week, obviously, it was a different crowd because it was rave and we had different DJs. But I got talking to the doorman, and I was like, how the do you work here with these like lunatics? And he said, all the shots are a dangerous place because you've got all of the army, the squaddies that come out for a fight, and there's parachute regiments in all the shop, right? So they love fighting.
Alex Reid.
You had Alex Reid, cage fighters. You had the local criminals. You had the local people for the council estate. It was a melting pot of fucking violence, Aldershot. And, people used to go to Aldershot and from where we were to beat up soldiers, right? Because what happened in Camberley is a lot of the army boys went to Camberley because they thought it was posher than Aldershot. And then what they do is they come into the clubs and they'd like beat up the people from Camberley. So the people from Camberley used to get in the car and drive to Aldershot to find anybody who looks like a squad and just bash them up. So the people actually went to Aldershot for fucking violence, right? So as I'm talking to these guys, one of them was an ex-SAS guy, right? And I said to him, I said, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I got all their numbers. So you fast forward to when I then start coming into London doing these raves. And back then, the venues were Peckham, Brixton, Stratford, Tottenham. These areas now are quite nice, right? But back then it was like the hood.
I went to the Fridge. Was that Brixton?
It was.
Yeah, this was like 1990-ish.
But if you go to America and, you know, you look at, you know, LA and you talk about Compton, you talk about the hood, that's what these places were like, right? You know, you walk around there, you are going to get turned over, right? You know, and you imagine you got 3,000 to 5,000 people from all over the country turning up in this area. Some are coming on trains, some are parking their cars, they're all wandering around. They don't know where they are. So for the locals, they're like, great, we're going to have an earner here. So I just thought, you know, I need to make sure, A, that I can get to the venue. And my mum used to work with me in the cash box, and my girlfriend. So it was like a family thing because I didn't trust anyone else. So I thought, I got my mum and my girlfriend at the time in the cash box taking the money. I need to make sure I'm protected, they're protected. And also, because you heard all these stories about these doormen letting in people selling drugs, turning the promoters over, you know, letting people in the fire exits and not searching them. And obviously at the time then, guns and knives were regular, even though they're not allowed in England. They were a regular thing. So I said to this guy, the XSS guy, I said to him, listen, I said, I need somebody like you and I need a team of people, right? Because I said, we're going into these places and I know you ain't going to run away and I know that you are used to extreme violence and you enjoy it. So I probably need 3 or 4 guys with you. And then that ended up being 10, right? So I was right, and I had a dog handler as well. So we had a special forces dog handler with 2 Dobermans that were tack dogs, right? So it started off with 4, and then it grew to 10. And, you know, people would say, why have you got these guys? And I just say, you know, I keep hearing these stories. And obviously we did have problems with people. You know, when we did have problems, it got sorted out pretty quickly.
Indeed. The book had me gripped like crazy with your handling of these problems. And one of the stories I would love to hear in detail is when the Manchester gang came down.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what happened was, you know, we went up to Milton Keynes, and Milton Keynes is not a particularly bad place, but we put on a Garage Nation event, and at the time there was issues. This was the late 90s, and there was people getting shot dead. There was drive-by shootings. There was quite a few bad things happening in the UK garage scene. And also the jungle drum and bass scene, you know, it was sort of like, you know, and I think the Manchester at the time was obviously called Gunchester. And there was a lot of gun crime in Manchester, probably worse than anywhere else in England. And this firm come down from Manchester, turned up at our event, and there was probably about 15 or 16 of these guys, and I was all fairly young, but they turned up, and one of my guys who knew all the sort of gang bangers, and he was always like respectful to them, and he was always like, look, you know, we treat them well, they treat us well, and if, you know, so there was an understanding. So when these guys come in, you know, the Dorman was like, we don't really want to let them in. I said, I don't want to let them in, right? And then he had a chat to me. He went, tell, look, from Manchester, we know they're with, I know their bosses or whatever. You know, they said they're going to behave, they're going to be respectful. You know, if we don't let them in, we are going to have a problem with them, right? Because they are lively, right? So he said, we can either have a problem with them now, or they've assured me, and I do know the guys above them in Manchester, so if there is a problem, you know, it'll be sorted out. So I said, well, you know, if you think they're going to behave, let them in. If they f*** about, they're going to go. And he went, okay, so we had a word with them. They went in. Now, this must have been about 11:30. At midnight, people start leaving. So I'm thinking, people have only just started arriving, really, 10:30, 11:30. It's only just getting going. It don't really get going till 1. So people leaving at 12. I thought it's a bit odd. So I stopped this couple leaving, and I said to the guy, yeah, why are you going? And he said, oh, there's these guys in there with their hoods up, and they just kicked me up the arse, and I was touching my missus up, and I turned around and said, like, what you doing? And they all like surrounded me and started putting it on me. And I said, what did they sound like? He said, they're from up north. And I said, what did they wear? And it was them, right? So I said to my mate, I said, I told you we shouldn't let me in. I've got to go, right? So he said, oh, we talked to him. So as we walk in, we sort of, there was only 10 of us, and it was like 15. We sort of surrounded them sort of like that, and just, you know, let my mate do the talking. And as he's talking, the guy started getting leery. And I said, listen, mate. And he goes, who are you talking to? So I've just nutted him, grabbed him around the throat, and then it's gone off, right? So we're now fighting in this middle of this rave with these guys. We've rushed them through the fire doors. And then in the car park, it was like the Wild West. We were just like hitting them, like, and then as we were doing them, we were like throwing them in a ditch, right? So they was all like laying in this ditch. They was all like piled up, and then we've like shut the doors. And I've got in, and I've going, fuck's sake. And I said, make sure you ring your mate and tell him about these because of what they've done. So I then walk in, and I always used to have a spotter in the car park because I was always worried that somebody was going to come up and try and shoot somebody. And because my mum and my girlfriend was there, I was always worried because they're sat in the cash box, and somebody at a rave, there was an altercation outside, and somebody did let a gun off, and the woman did get shot in the cash box. So I was always paranoid that could be my mum or my girlfriend or me, right? So everyone we all had bulletproof vests, and I always had the spotter outside. So we get a call on the radio saying, you know those guys? Yes. Well, they're putting balaclavas on, and they're loading up machine guns in the car park. So I was like, okay, lock the doors, ring the police, right? Because, you know, we haven't got any machine guns to have a fucking gunfight with them, right? So the police were there within a minute. So, you know, when you do these events at that time, they was obviously aware, and they obviously have intel that people are going to be there that may cause trouble. And within a minute, there was armed response. And it was like a load of soldiers with helmets, MP5 machine guns, literally just it's like 12:30, right, on a Saturday night. And they're all standing outside, and people still turn up. And you can see people turn up going like, the security is a bit hotty. It was like the army had descended. And the police inspector come in, and he said, look, you need to go, right? And I said, well, I can't really leave my rave. And he said, well, if you don't, these people are going to kill you, right? And I said, and they're going to probably kill a lot of people. It's not just going to be you, because, you know, we know that somebody's come on a motorbike and they've taken whatever they had away. And I said, well, my guys saw them it looked like machine guns. They were loading up in the car park. And he said, well, we've checked them out. They are gang affiliated, and they have all done armed robbery. They have murdered people. He said, you know, they are serious people, so you need to go, right? So I said to my mate, you're going to have to stay here, but we're going to have to go because we're getting an armed response escort home. So we get in the car, my mum, my girlfriend, my mate who's driving, and the other guy. And then one of the other guys said, look, I'm going to drive up in my car, even though the police are there, just in case, right? Because I just ran off the road. So I was like, okay. So we didn't have a dog handler at this point, but after this event, that's when we got the dog handler, right? And what happened was we're driving down the road, and then as we get onto the M1 to go back down towards London, he phones me and he goes, Terry, he goes, I meant to say this to you earlier, but he said, I am going to take him out in this car if I have to. But he said, I've got one problem. And I said, what's that? And he said, I'm only insured third-party fire and theft. So he said, if I do use my car to take him out, I'm not going to be out claiming insurance. So I said, don't worry, I'll buy you a new car. But that was like just one of the crazy incidents. And then, you know, my guy then phoned the people in Manchester and said, these guys come down, this is what they've done. And they all got reprimanded when they got back. But the thing is, the problem with what I refer to as the Young Turks, they're all out to make a name for themselves. And, you know, they didn't know, you know, look, if you turn up somewhere and you're from a gang and someone says to you, I know someone's home Manchester, they go, yeah, all right, yeah, we'll be respectful. But they probably think you're just saying that, right? You don't really know them. But this guy really did know him. So it got sorted out and there was no more problems. But take it, you know, I didn't go to Manchester to do any raves after that, because I lie. I did go to Manchester because somebody did an event at the GMEX, and 15,000 people, and they wanted to do a Gary's Nation event. So I went up there, and in the back of my head, I was thinking, I hope these guys don't turn up, or one of them goes, oh, that's that lot who we've, you know, let's go and do something. Even though, you know, at the end of the day, they just get told off. It's not like anything's going to happen to them. So I was actually standing at the entrance to the GMEX, and I saw these guys come up, and they actually went up to the Dorman. Now, bear in mind, there's a wall of metal detectors, and there's these guys, and everyone's walking through the metal detectors, and these guys walked up and went like that, and the guy walked them around the metal detectors. So I was like, I'm fucking going. Do you know what I mean? Straight away, I'm not standing around here, because even if it isn't for me, if I know somebody's wandering around that venue with whatever they've got in their jacket that they don't want to be walking through a metal detector for, and the security just let them walk through, anything could happen. And, you know, there's so many shootings, or there was a lot of shootings in the club scenes, which innocent people happen to be standing in the wrong place, and somebody's let a gun off and the bullet's hit there, gone there, and it's hit them in the head and killed them. Or it's, hit them in the back and they can't fucking walk again, you know? So I was always really worried about that happening. Touch wood, we never had any shootings, but that was the closest we'd ever come to actually having a massacre, if you like, a club night, which was meant to be a safe place for people to enjoy dance music.
You mentioned there was a cashier who got shot. Yeah. What was the backstory there? Well,
there was a club in East London called the Stratford Rex, and I mean we've had this a couple of times, and I don't know what night was on, but the week before our event, there was an issue where somebody come out of the club and they had a row with the doorman, and the guy said, "I'm going to come back and shoot you," and the guy went, "Yeah, mate, all right, well, I'm here, go and get your gun and come and shoot me." And then the guy come back and just went back, shot the doorman, shot the ceiling, went into the cash box and hit the girl. I mean, she lived, thank God, and the doorman lived. But this is the week before event. So when we do our event, everyone's going, oh, there was a shooting at the Rex, there was this, there was that. I think, for f***'s sake, I just want to put a rave on. You know, I'm going to have peace and quiet, you know what I mean? And you know, I was thinking, you know, when you hear something like that and there's actual signs up. So you imagine you're going to a rave to have a good time and there's signs going, shooting, you know, police inquiry, you know, phone this number if you've got any information. So people was queuing up going, oh, you know, and East London was moody then anyway. So to actually have that outside, and we had the same thing at the Island in Ilford, the week before one of our events, I think it was Jungle Fever. There was an event on at the Island in Ilford, and you know, there was an event. Somebody got thrown out. He was mugging people. He said, "I'm going to come back and shoot you," and he came back with a gun. I think he killed one of the doormen and he shot another one of them and wounded him. You know, and I said to all my doormen, I said, if anybody threatens to shoot us, we set the f***ing dogs on them, and if we don't set the dogs on them, we grab hold of them, we make sure they can't go back to that car to get any guns. Because once someone threatens to kill you, and because it's happened twice now, I said, we can't take any chances. You know, I don't want to be wandering outside a club and then someone goes bang because I just happen to be in the wrong, or one of my punters gets shot, you know. So I was, and I actually even phoned the police. I actually said, look, I'm a prolific promoter. I'm doing 20 events a month. There's a massive issue, as you know, with gun crime. And, you know, I'd like to pay for an armed response unit outside my events. I don't care what it costs, I'll pay. We don't do that service, sir. And I was like, so someone pulls a gun out, what do? Call 999. I said, well, it might be a bit late. But then at the time, you know, I was like, you know, what do we do here, right? And I think that's when the violence really did escalate. And, you know, back then, bear in mind, there was no CCTV. And in places like Stratford and Brixton and Tottenham, there was people getting raped, mugged, murdered, stabbed, shot, their houses burgled, their cars broken into. So if you're putting an event on and 5,000 people are coming to that place, or 3,000 or 2,000 or whatever it is, obviously you're bringing a load more aggravation into that borough for the police to cope with. And, you know, we ended up having to be like, you know, law enforcement. We had to enforce it ourselves. And one night, you know, one of the, I think he was an inspector, turned up and come out of the car, and he said, and he asked the doorman, he said, "Is the promoter here?" And the guy said, "Oh, there's a police officer outside. I think he's an inspector or something, he wants to speak to you." So I went outside and he said, "Oh, you know, you the promoter?" I went, "Yeah." So I've been watching you and your friends. And although we can't condone your behaviour, you know, you've actually saved us a lot of work, because when you did an event here last month, we probably had 600 or 700 calls where people have been mugged, their cars have been broken into, you know, their watch has been stolen, whatever, you know. So he said, you know, I can't say that I can know, but he was basically saying thanks, because I think, you know, the police were getting sick of it as well.
One of the things that really brings your book to life was the backstories of your doormen. The way you described, I was really gripped. Can you convey some of those stories to the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
characters.
There was characters. There's a guy called John, who was he was about. He sounds about a little bit like your nutty mate. Wildman, yeah. I need to say Wild Bill then, but Wildman, yeah. He was a big guy, and he used to bodyguard and look after a guy called Wilf Pine, who I don't know if you know Wilf, but he was a crazed link to the mafia. He was allegedly the only made Englishman in the mafia. He's dead now, but at the time, he used to look after him. And he said to me, "Look, you know, have him. He's a good guy." And it was actually quite funny, because when we did the Rex, there was a company called Mean Fiddler that owned it. And that they were an Irish organisation. And him and his mate were standing in the car park with balaclavas on, because it was freezing cold. And the guy come in from the club and he went, "You need to go with those guys, take the balaclavas off, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, you can tell them, jump in. I'm not going to tell them." But obviously that didn't go down very well. But John was good fun. And Alex was his sort of partner, and he was a world kickboxing champion. So he was pretty good. There's another guy called Gary Gooner. He used to do a lot of the reggae events in Stonebridge. And back then, you know, before the rave scene started, that was where there was a lot of shootings and a lot of violence. So to work as a doorman in those areas at that time, you know, he was highly respected throughout London. Everyone knew who he was. You know, he used to have a newspaper and he used to have a scaffold pole in the newspaper with concrete in the middle. So if anybody upset him and he got the newspaper out, you know, you didn't want to hear about that, because that was, you know, that did shut up quite a few people. But he become quite well known for his newspaper antics.
Can you remember any specific stories of him using the newspaper?
Yeah, I mean, I remember we was outside the Stratford Rex, and these guys, and what happened, because the queue was quite long, we'd always have air security patrolling the queue to make sure people weren't getting mugged. Everyone was queuing up just to protect everybody. And we had people at the train station, so when people come off a train, we'd escort them over just to make sure they didn't get messed around with. And one night, you know, I was standing just on the corner, and then I saw these guys like walking up and down the queue, and they were asking people if they had any spare tickets and then taking the tickets off them. Right, and then he saw it and went over to him and said, "Listen," he said, "give the fucking tickets back." Right, and the guys turned around to him and started racially abusing him. Right, and I was thinking, "Oh my God, why are you doing this?" You know what I mean? You're doing it to the worst person in the world. And normally he'd go, right? He'd just go, and he didn't go. And I was thinking, it's a bit weird. He's like standing there taking all his abuse off this guy. And then he was standing there like going, oh, really? Really? Okay. Yes. Yes, I am. Yes, you're right. Yes, I am. I am. Yes, 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 yes. You're right. You're right. Then all of a sudden, just whack. And then he just, it was literally quite funny. It was literally, you know, like when you see someone with a samurai sword and they go, it was like he just went, and then put the newspaper back in his pocket and walked off. And these guys were just laying on the road. and then people saw that and everybody was a bit like, don't do that. And the thing is, when people saw things like that, they realised it's zero tolerance. You know what I mean? And, you know, one guy come up to the door at the Rex and threatened to kill everybody, he's going to shoot everybody. So the guy just got the dog out and he said, if you don't f*** off, I'm going to set this dog on you. And the guy said, set the dog on me then. And he went like that in his jacket, so the dog just done him. Because as soon as he went like a jacket, the dog's going. But the dog's insured, right? And then the guy rings the police. And says, they've set a dog on me. And the police come and they go, you know, what happened? And he said, look, I'm standing here. The guy's threatening to shoot people. There was like all the witnesses, all the doormen. And I brought the dog out and said, if you don't go, I'll let... And he said he put his hand in his jacket. And I wasn't waiting for him to pull something out. So nothing happened. You know, the guy went to hospital. But that was the sort of crazy shit that went on in the club scene. And, you know, because I was from a council estate and I was in my 20s, although it sounds extreme and crazy, I didn't really care because I wasn't, you know, I was from nothing. I lived in a council flat. So for me, if, you know, somebody has a fight or somebody does something, and obviously when I started to get something and I started to make money and I started to have a proper business, at that point I started feeling a little bit like I had to, you know, the security were there to protect me, but they were there to protect the punters, right? They were to make sure my mum and my girlfriend was okay. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're paying me money to come to an event, right, I want you to come in and have a good night and go home and come to the next one. But if you get mugged or beaten up or your car gets broken into or you have a bad experience, you're going to come out and say, I'm not going back there. So then overnight your brand dies. So, you know, we did it from 93 to 2003 for 10 years. We won all the best promoter awards for Garage Nation and One Nation. We were doing 20 to 30 events a month around the world. You know, we expanded this great business, but, you know, we had to, you know, not when we was in Ibiza and Napa and places like that, but when we was in London or in Manchester, if we were doing big events, we did have to carry our own sort of team with us because, and when I met my wife, you know, she came around my house, you know, on the day I was doing an event. And, you know, for me, this is just normality. So I had all duffel bags, bulletproof vests, all by the front door. And so when she came in my house, she looked at me, and then she was like, what's all that about? She probably thought I was an armed robber or something, right? And I just said to her, I said, oh, this is just how we have to go to work. And she said, so what do you actually do? And I said, I put on raves. And she's never been to a rave. She said, I've never been to a rave. I said, why don't you come tonight? And she went, okay, I'll come. So she's gone out, she's turned up, and obviously she's not dressed to go to a rave, right? She's dressed to go to a club in Mayfair, right? So she started seeing all these guys turning up, and the dog van turns up with the dogs in the back. She's like going, who are these people? And I said, oh, he's ex-SAS, he's parachute regiment, he's this, he's that. And she was like, you basically surround yourself with like these fucking, like, it's like you're going to work with like fucking serial killers and some attack dogs, and you're all wearing bulletproof vests. She said, I think you need to find a fucking different job. And that's why I come out of it. And in the last year of putting events on, I had a gun pulled out of me 3 times.
Can you tell us those stories?
It was just stupid, you know. It was like, you know, one of them was Stratford Rex. I mean, obviously, I talked to you about the one in Milton Keynes. That was obviously a serious one, right? The next one was, you know, I was in the Rex, and I come out of the Rex, and we had this policy where everybody had to be searched. Nobody could be walked in, right? It doesn't matter who you are. You're being searched. And these 3 guys come up to the door and said, we're with so-and-so, we're coming in. And it's like, mate, you're not coming in. If you're on a guest list, you can come in, but you'll be searched. If you're not on a guest list, you got to fucking pay, right? Well, you don't know who we are. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Blah blah. And as I've walked out, I've walked into all this stuff, right? So the guy's going on, and I'm going to do this. I said, who are you talking to? And he turned around to me. He goes, I'm talking to you. I said, well, do you want to fucking do something about it? And he went, yeah, come round the back. I said, all right, let's go. So I'm walking around the back with two of my mates. And then my mate goes to me, he goes, Terry, he's pulled a fucking gun out, right? And I couldn't see because it was dark. So I thought we were just going around and have a fucking tear up. So he's pulled a fucking gun out on me. And then I'm like, oh, what, are you going to shoot me now? And he goes, yeah, I am. And I was going, oh, right, because we won't let you and you're going to shoot me. And as I'm saying that, I'm walking backwards. You know what I mean? But that was quite...
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I've got some exciting news to announce. Michael Franzese is coming back to tour the UK in 2024. The Remade Man Tour, the Michael Franzese story. Michael Franzese, once named one of the 50 most significant mob bosses in the USA by Fortune magazine, and a former member of the notorious Colombo crime family, will take you deep into the world of organised crime, sharing captivating tales and insights into the mafia's past, present and future. Join us for an unforgettable evening with Michael Franzese, the original Goodfella, as he exclusively sits down with myself, Sean Attwood. With me as the host, there's going to be a no-holes-barred exploration of Michael Franzese's life, including his numerous arrests and jury trials that ultimately led to his pleading guilty to a federal racketeering charge, a 10-year prison sentence, and $15 million in restitution. You will have the unique opportunity to ask questions during an audience Q&A session, making this event a must-see for true crime enthusiasts and anyone curious about the underworld. Don't miss this explosive in-conversation with Michael Franzese. Live on stage in the UK, this exclusive in-person event will be held in various locations in the UK, Ireland and Scotland. Link in the description box below this video if you want to grab yourself a ticket. Back to the podcast. Cheers.
You know, and then another time was at the Coliseum where somebody pulled a gun out and was threatening to shoot people, and he got sort of disarmed and fucked off. But Christmas Day, right, we did an event, Christmas Day night, at the Ministry of Sound, which is a famous club in London for anyone who doesn't know it. And we actually had people turning up at the door saying, can you walk me in? I'm carrying. And we're like, absolutely not. You know, you're not bringing it in here. Well, I'm from North. If the guy's from South, because at the time there was North, East, South, West, and they all wanted to kill each other. So you had all these crews and all these gangs, but they all wanted to come to my events. So it was like we had to sort of be the sort of peacekeepers. So we were like, you know, if you got a problem with them, sort it out another time. But if you're coming in there, you can't bring it, go and put it in the car. And we had this argument all night. There must have been 10 different people said the same thing. And I got to the point where I'm driving home, like Boxing Day morning, thinking in my head, I'm putting an event on Christmas Day night and I'm having to ask people to go and put their guns in the car. And I just thought, this. And then with the repetitiveness of people pulling guns out, people threatening to shoot people, and then people hearing about people getting shot and stabbed and all sorts of stuff, I just thought, I've got to get out of this place. Because when I first got into it, I didn't care. But I think as soon as you meet somebody that you want to be with, you have a kid, you know, you get a mortgage, you know, all of a sudden you've got something. When you've got nothing, you've got nothing to lose. But when you've actually got something, you actually think to yourself, do I really want to be putting myself in a position where people are going to potentially shoot me, kill me? And you know, I was always paranoid that somebody would find out where I lived and think, oh, you know, Terry's going to have a load of cash because he's a promoter. Because back then, obviously, it was all cash. But I used to put every penny I earned in the bank. And people used to say to me, you're fucking idiot. You're paying tax on that. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I said, I want to pay tax on it because I want to buy a car. I want to buy a house. I want to go on holiday. I want to buy a watch. I don't want to be laying under my bed. I've got 200 grand and then somebody comes in and takes it. Or the police come in and say, oh, where'd you get that from? And I'm like, I'm a rave promoter. And they're like, yeah, of course you are. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it was always put the cash in the bank. And back then, you occasionally got checks off people. You might get a bank transfer, but it was cash because you'd go to the venues, people would pay cash. There was no credit card machines. You go to a record shop that would sell your tickets, it was always cash. So for me, there was a lot of cash. But then I was always worried because when we did an event, it was quite clever because we'd sell the tickets in advance. So there wouldn't really be any cash at the events. And people would always say, are you not worried that someone's going to rob your event? I said, well, I don't care if they do because there's no money there anyway. Right? There's only the cash on the door, and we used that to pay the DJs. And then, that was it. So really most of the money was sold through record shops and through advance ticket sales. So there was never really any large amounts of money to steal anyway. And so we never, but in the back of my head, I know there was a moment in the rave scene where as the DJs started earning more money, some of them were getting £1,000 an hour. And they were going out 4 or 5 times a night. And then obviously you get these street kids going, EZ's out over the weekend, 10, 15 grand, right? Andy C's out. Where do these people live? Do you know what I mean? And then they actually started targeting the DJs. So they'd actually, and obviously if you go around their house at 8 in the morning, they've been out DJing or they were asleep, come in the door and shake them down. And that started happening to the DJs, and that was quite a scary time. If you're a DJ, you're just going out playing music. And I think a lot of the DJs then said, oh, can you give me a check? Because I didn't want the cash.
So there's a story in the book where you had to take to the streets to kind of shadow a mugger. I think it was in Brixton.
Yeah.
Do you remember
that? It might have been in Stratford, actually.
Stratford, was it?
Right.
How did that come about?
When you say shadow the mugger...
You were like pretending, you were like hiding, you were waiting to get the guy?
No. So what happened was we had... So this was in Stratford, and what happened was we did... The first time we ever did an event in Stratford, we had so much trouble. Like all the cars got broken into, people getting mugged left, right and centre, with people inside mugging people. And I was like, why can't we stop these f***ers? You know what I mean? And I actually remember driving home from the rave. When I woke up Sunday, I was so angry, right? I actually drove back up to Stratford and I literally walked around Stratford on my own, looking around thinking, where are these f***ers hiding? How do they do this? And worked out where they were hiding, where they were running to, where all the little places where they could go and then jump out on people as they come from the station. So I thought, well, I've not got enough security. So I just said, look, this is going to cost me money, but I don't care. For one night, I want 10 extra guys. I don't want them to come to work. I just want them to go around all night beating people up, right? And they were like, so you want us to bash people up? I went, yes. And I said, what I want you to do, I'm going to walk around Stratford. And I said, I don't want you to attack anybody, but I want you to wait and observe. And obviously a lot of these guys are military guys. So I said, I just want you to walk around and observe these f***ers. And I said, when you see these people coming off a train, walking into a rave, you're going to see a group of them and you're going to see these characters, right? And when these characters come out, give us your money. I just want you to do them, right? So that's what happened. And they, that night they probably beat up 40 people, but badly, not just smacking them in the mouth, like bashing them up to the point where they were like probably unconscious. But then, a lot of people would say, well, that's extreme. But if you've got people pulling knives out on you and you've got people mugging you for your shit, and that's the problem with the UK right now. If you go down the road in Mayfair or in Knightsbridge and you've got a nice watch on and somebody sees it, you're going to get mugged. And they might ask you for it. They might just stab you and take it. But that has become normality, right? And for me, back then, I wasn't having it. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, what these people were doing was self-defense. They weren't just attacking people in the street. They were literally observing people. And as soon as they pulled a knife out or as soon as they started saying, give me the watch, they walk up to me, what are you fucking doing? They then turn around and go, do you want it? And they go, yes, please, have some of that. Because, these people thrive on, they do unarmed combat, right? So for them, they love this. You pull a knife out on me, I'm going to take it off you and stick up your ass. It's that sort of mentality. So unfortunately, that was kind of how it was. And, when I look back on those 10 years, I look back on it and I just think, I can't believe, that nothing bad really happened. People would say, well, if people are coming to your raves, mugging people, trying to stab people or pull guns at them, that is bad. But it never got bad where somebody actually did die or anything bad happened. So.
Did you leave out the story of your doorman who was the weapons guy?
Oh, yeah, Warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, he was nuts. I mean, I met him at the Roller Express, and he was just like a crazy character. And I remember the first time I met him, and he would talk in riddles. So you'd speak to him, and he'd be like going, I can't even remember what he'd say, but he'd say some like, and he'd quote text from the Bible. So you'd be talking to him, and then he'd just start going on about, if you read Psalm 308 or 28 or whatever it is, it says this, the Lord is my shepherd, and always, you'd be like, right, okay. Then he'd just walk off. And you think, what an odd character. And people go, he's serious, you know what I mean? He carries a samurai sword, right? Down his back. And he always used to have this like backpack thing on. And I used to think, does he really? But he really did. And he was I don't know if he was the head doorman or if he was just the guy that was there to stop any, because people knew he was. So when you turn up, he was on the door, and it was like, don't f out of him because, he's serious. He was one of the guys that I said to, when we do events, do you want to come do some work with us? And then he'd be, yeah, absolutely. And then, but then, the downside was you'd have to listen to his sort of poetry and his sort of Bible quotes. But the upside was, people knew he was. And what I did was I had a few sort of army boys that were special forces, and then I had a few people like that who people on the street knew. So you knew when you turned up, you were like, you've got him, and you've got him, and you've got him. I don't know who these guys are, but they don't look particularly friendly. And you've got these fucking dogs, right, that just were like, if you ever see a real attack dog, you don't want to go anywhere near it because it will just have you, you know what I mean? And this guy who had him, he used to put his black suit on, and he used to say, when I put a black suit on, do not come anywhere near me, do not walk up to the dog, do not pat the dog on the head because it will bite you. So we was all like, okay. And one day, one of the doormen walked past the dogs and didn't realise they were there, and the dog literally missed him by that much, and he was like, now that dog, keep the dog away. But I think a lot of the stuff that we did was for show. A lot of it was a deterrent. People walk up to a club and they see these characters on the door. They see the dogs. They see the venue security. The venue had their own, they were normally like quite serious people, because bear in mind back then, there was no SIA licensing. You didn't, if you had it, the worse that your criminal record is, the more chance you'd be asked to work on the door. But now, obviously, you have to be licensed. You can't have a criminal record. So to work on the door now, you have to be an upstanding member of the community. But back then, they wanted, people that had done time. They wanted people that could have a row. They wanted martial arts people. They wanted soldiers. They wanted, tough guys. So a lot of the guys who worked, on the door were like that. So one of the guys who worked for me, who again, he'd dip in and out, but he was called the Animal, right? And he was about 6'4", 18 stone. And if you saw him, you'd know that he was somebody you wouldn't want to fuck around with. He just had that thing about him where you saw him and you'd be like, if I trod on his foot, I'd say sorry, and then I'd try and get away as quickly as possible. But he used to work the doors in Plymouth, and his thing was beating up more Marines. He used to love it. He used to beat up 4 or 5 at a time, and he used to say, and I said to him, I said, what was the best bit about working the doors in Plymouth? And these guys are like bashing up Marines. He goes, I thrived on it. And he goes, if the special boat service coming, they got it and all. And he was just a lunatic, this guy. And I remember saying to my mate, because he said, he's now living in Kent. I said, do you want to see if he's available? Right. And he goes, Terry, if he works on a door and it goes off, he said, he is a liability. You know what I mean? You really don't want him. And when we did Milton Keynes, right, bear in mind, the last time we went to Milton Keynes, we'd had all this aggro with this fucking people from Manchester. So we're going back again. And I went, do you know something? Let's bring the fucking Animal out just in case these come back. Right. So he's on the door, right? And for whatever reason, it did go off, right? And what was funny...
With which group?
Well, I don't know, just another group of fellas But they decided, right? So what would happen is when you did these events, you did always have problems, right? So there'd always be a fight. There'd always be someone trying to come in. There'd always be someone trying to jump over the fence. There'd always someone caught with drugs and they hand them over to the police or throw them out, whatever. So there was always something happening, right? If you got 3 or 4 or 5,000 people in a room, it's not going to go without incidents. So there's always going to be something, right? So these guys, I think they were from Nottingham, right? Decided it'd be a really good idea to rush the door, right? So we're standing, now in Milton Keynes, there's this like, I think it's called Herrera fencing. They're like metal fences and they're temporary structures, right? But they stop people obviously coming in and out of things. So they have to like go round, right? So he's standing looking and he goes, Terry, I think we've got a problem. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, see them fellas over there? They're going to rush the door. And I went, yeah? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, I'm not going to have it. So I'm do them all, right? And I was like, but they're on the other side of the fence. He goes, I'm going to get the fence and I'm going to do them with the fence. I was like, what? And literally put up to the fence, picked this fucking fence up, right? And went like that with it. And then as he did it, they all fucking rushed forward and he just ran out and went, ah! He's just done them all with his fence, right? And there were all these people like laying on the floor. And I was just, and then he's like, throws the fence down. He's like, ah. And I've literally said to my mate, I said, you need to get rid of him. Do you know what I mean? He's lost the plot. But it was funny because he just saw it. He must have had like some sort of sixth sense, but he was like, this is what they're going to do. I'm not going to they're not coming in. I'm going to do them with a fence. And then when he picked the fence up, I mean, this geezer, he was like superhuman strength. I mean, them fences are fucking heavy. Picked the whole thing up and he just went, and just done them with a fence. Do you know what I mean? So it was a bit like Braveheart, you know, they're all running towards him. He just went, with a fence. So there was some funny, I mean, it probably wasn't funny at the time, but there was some crazy times where, you know, things just happened. And, you know, he worked for us on a few events, but for him, he wanted the action. You know, with us, we didn't want the action. We if we had to have it, obviously we would have it, but we didn't want it. We wasn't, and with him, he thrived on it. He wanted it. You know, if it didn't go off, he'd be upset. He'd go home and go, I haven't done anyone tonight. So, but if anybody knows him by that and actually knows who he is, I won't say his name, but if they know who he is, they'll all go, that guy is, he was proper. Do you know what I mean?
If he's watching, let's get you on the podcast.
Yeah. I'd like to get him on my podcast, but I think the problem with a lot of these characters is obviously back then, you know, whatever they've done. And I think a lot of them now are probably in their 50s and 60s, and they've kind of done it. I mean, some of them are still working on the door, but one of their guys from South London, he was 8th Dan martial arts expert. And again, he was a feared guy, right? You see him on the door, people didn't around with him. And I've seen him do 4 or 5 geezers, just like, bop, 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 and you're all like laying on the floor. You're like, fucking hell, I'm going to come at your dojo, right? And he, when I sold my business, obviously a lot of the guys that worked for me, they only worked for me really, but what happened was people then started headhunting them, ringing them up, going, oh, do you want to come and run my door? Do you want to come and do this? Do you want to come and do that? And he actually went to the Coliseum in Vauxhall, and he was standing outside there one night, and I think this was 2004, 2005. So I sold up in 2003. So 2004, 2005, this happened, and he was standing outside. These 2 kids come up, they must have been 16, 17, and they walked up to the door, and he said, you need to stand over in the queue there, gentlemen. He's very polite. I said, who the think you're talking to? We're going in, we're not being searched. So he's turned around at me and goes, you ain't coming in. And one of them just went like that, and he shot him 8 times outside the thing. Luckily, he lived. But, you know, that was how crazy. And that's really why I sold up, because I got to the point where I've met, you know, the love of my life. She's having a baby, got a mortgage. I'm in a position now where I'm thinking, I'm 30 years of age. Do I really want to be driving to work in a bulletproof vest, standing in nightclubs till 6, 7 in the morning, dealing with all these low life that want to come in and cause trouble all the time? And also because of the escalation of violence, what happened with a lot of the clubs and what happened with a lot of the local authorities and the police, they then wanted to know what events were on, who the promoter was, you know, what DJs are going to play. And if, you know, you had a reputation, I didn't, but for problems, you ain't putting an event on. If you had a certain DJ or a certain crew on, you're not booking them. We're not having it, right? So it got to the point where you was putting events on, but it was like painting by numbers. So it was like, I'm creative, so I want to book these DJs, but you're telling me I can't because they're going to bring trouble. So, and obviously if you're a club owner, you've got a license. You've got this fucking asset. So if there's a problem, you lose your license. You've got this expensive building you can't open. So what a lot of the large venue owners done was they redeveloped the properties if they had the freeholds, or they sold the properties on and they got redeveloped. So a lot of the clubs, venues, all got redeveloped. If you look at Brixton Academy, that was one of their favourite venues. But obviously they had a problem with people rushing the door at that concert recently. Some people died. They, you know, closed it. Do you know what I mean? And there was always the danger that would happen. There's a shooting, someone dies on drugs, it's shut down, right? And obviously there was a lack of venues. There was you know, obviously the violence had increased massively. And it didn't become fun. You know, when I started it, when I first went out in 1991, it was fun. There was no trouble. It was all one love, one vibe, one nation. Everyone wanted to be your mate. You'd never see a fight. And then I'd say 94, 95, the music changed. You know, the jungle music come out. There's a few problems with that. Then there was a few shootings, a few stabbings. Then the garage scene come along. And when the garage scene started, again, everyone used to wear suits. All the girls would dress up. It was really nice. Everyone would be drinking champagne. It was class. And then what happened was the crews come along and then it became more of a street thing. So then it was like, we don't wear suits anymore. We don't dress up. We wear tracksuits. We wear trainers. We have our hoods up. We wear sunglasses. So then it became more of an estate thing. And then obviously other people, you know, that couldn't afford a suit and didn't want to drink champagne were going. And then it became like a free-for-all. And, you know, obviously if you was in a crew from North London and you were a criminal in North London, you would follow that crew. And then if you was in East London and there was a crew and they were performing and you were a criminal, you'd follow them. So you had these crews of these guys that were, they were like, you know, musicians, DJs, MCs, singers. And then they've got this sort of criminal fraternity following them. And then obviously you imagine you've got North, East, South and West, London, all turning up in one space. Then you've got some from Nottingham, some from Liverpool, some from Manchester. You've got some from Leeds, some from Leicester. And you've got this melting pot of fucking firms. And it's just going to go off. Yeah. And that really was, when that happened, you know, I mean, it was like walking around on eggshells. You know, Jeremy Bad Boy Bailey, he was also one of my guys and he was a world kickboxing champion. And the thing about him was he was, you know, 10 stone, tiny guy. Like, you look at him and I've seen so many people, like, you know, when he said to me, you need to leave, and they've gone, like, what are you going to do, mate? And I've seen him go, blah, blah, blah. Because obviously, you know, he can have it on a ridiculous scale. And, you know, I see a lot of people come unstuck with him. But again, you know, when you go back to that period of time, you know, I mean, we've had all, I mean, so many things happened, and at the time when it happens, you kind of brush it under the carpet and you laugh about it like it's normal. But then when I come out of it, and then I started obviously getting into acting and making films, when I look back on that, I just think, what crazy 10 years of my life promoting these events.
But you think that was integral in Terry being in these hairy self-defense situations, channeling the spirit of Terry Turbo into Tony Tucker? Because you're so, like, the scenes, the violent scenes, like, it gave me goosebumps watching your face.
Right.
Like, you really knew how to do it.
Well, I've obviously seen it a few times.
That's what I'm saying. Were you channeling?
No, I'll be honest with you.
If you didn't have those experiences, would you have been able to have been that realistic?
Do you know something? When I grew up, right, at school, if you was an actor or you wanted to be an actor, that was not the thing to do, right? that was for all the weird people did acting, right? So
drama
you
heads,
weren't cool if you did acting. So that all, and I think the problem with me when I grew up, because my mum and dad split up, and because I didn't have a really good sort of male role model in my life, and I got bullied at school because we didn't have any money, and things were tough growing up. And I think because of that, I always wanted, to be liked, to be loved, whatever you want to say. And I think if somebody said, "Oh, don't do that because it's not cool, the weirdos do that," you went, "Well, I'm not doing that then, because I don't want to be a weirdo. I don't want to be not people taking the piss at me. I want people to like me." So I think that. Otherwise, if I'd have done it when I was younger, maybe I'd have got the bug then. But I'd always loved movies. I've always loved entertainment. I always loved music before I promoted. I've always loved movies before I acted and produced movies. And I think obviously if you live a life, if you talk to any actor, look at Ray Winston, right? He has been around proper gangsters. He's boxed. He's been in that life, right? And he's been around it, right? But he's an actor, right? So when he plays these parts, it's easy for him because, he's playing himself. He's an East London lad, but he knows how to handle himself because he boxed. He knows about all these characters because he's seen them and he's met them. And obviously, if you're an actor, and I find this, and it's really weird, that Tony Tucker character, when you come out of jail in 2007, that's when that film come out. Yeah. And it become a cult film. And what I found crazy is if you fast forward to 2023, where we are now, there's been 6 films. There's been a computer game. So if you want to be Tony Tucker, you can actually play me or Pat Tate or Craig Rolfe and go around beating people up if that's your thing, on your iPhone or your Android phone, whatever. If you just said to me in 2006 when we were making that film, this is going to change your life. You're going to have all these films and this computer game out. And I'd have probably looked at you and I'd have probably laughed and gone, I don't think so. I think it'd do all right. But it became a phenomenon. And what happened was it got released in America and through Lionsgate. And a lot of, I can go, and it's gone out in Germany, it's gone out Australia, New Zealand, Holland, France, Italy, it's gone out everywhere. I go out now and people come up to me in the street and go, it's Tony Tucker, and all that. And some people actually think I am like that, and they go, I want to go out and get on it, and we get some birds. And I'm like, mate, I'll go to bed at 12 o'clock. Yeah. I'm probably the most boring in the world right now. If you just spoke to me 20, 25 years ago, I'd have been like, let's go to a rave, yeah, let's go out. But now it's sort of like, but it's what I love about it is it's enabled me to connect with people that I wouldn't normally connect with. And that's also one of the reasons why I've got into your game, podcasting, because when I look at entertainment, I always think if you can have a laugh with people and you can talk about things that people don't normally talk about, and that's what I love about your podcast, Sean, is that you brought people on that people don't know anything about, and you've given people access to stories they might have read about or heard about, but they haven't actually met the real people, seen the real people, and heard the real stories. And I think that is why I think podcasts have become so popular. And I think, obviously we've only just started doing ours, but, I think watching what you've done and all the other people that have I don't like to say that they've made it in the podcast world, because I think anybody who's got whether they've got 1,000 followers or 1 million followers, anybody that can actually take time to create content, whether it's a film, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a short film, I always applaud them, because I actually think you've got off your arse and you've done something, you've had a go. And I think the key to any success, whether it's putting on events, making movies, doing a podcast, acting, whatever, hosting, you just got to keep doing it. And you find your niche, and people, and for everyone who loves you, probably the same amount of people who hate you.
What got you into the Footsoldier in the first place? What's the backstory?
So I was in so how I got into movies, it's mad. Dave Courtney, again, right, was making a film called Hell to Pay. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, I'm making this film. do you want to have a little part in it? And I went, yeah, all right, why not? It'd be a laugh. I'm not doing anything. I've sold my business. I'm fucking, I'm on the dole basically. I need a job, yeah. So I've gone on this film set, and it was a low budget film, and my first scene was with Jeremy Bad Boy Bailey, right? And obviously I knew him from back in the day. And what was funny was I walked in, and the director goes, "Oh, stand over there." So I'm standing over there, filming the scene. A couple of hours go past. I was like, am I actually going to do anything? And they went, well, yeah, you stand over there. I said, mate, I haven't driven it to stand over there like a div. I said, I want to say something. He goes, what do you want to say? And I said, I don't know, give me some lines. And he goes, all right, we'll do an improvisation. He said, sit here and take the piss out of this guy, right? So I sit there and just took the piss out of him, like roasted him for about 10 minutes, right? And you could see him getting more and more annoyed, right? Because we're being filmed. And at the end of it, the director's laughing. He goes, we're going to keep that in the film. And the other guy goes, do you know saying, nobody's ever spoke to me like that. And I said, just acting, mate, you know what I mean? But then the director started going, we get Terry in this, we get Terry in that. So I only had probably 5 scenes in the film. But what it did was it connected me with Scott Welsh, who's just been in Snatch, Andy Beckwith, who's just been in Snatch, Martin Hancock, who was a Spider in Coronation Street, Billy Murray, who was in The Bill for years. So I got talking to these other actors, and I was sort of like, I've actually enjoyed this. I wouldn't mind having a go. And I said, what do you do to be an actor? And he said, well, you've done your first part, get the scenes, get your show reel, get some pictures done, get an agent, and you're an actor. I was like, oh. So I've gone home and said to my wife, oh, yeah, be an actor now. And she sort of, she's 8 months pregnant, sort of spat Maltesers out. And she was like, she said, are you on drugs? And I was like, no. And she goes, go and look in the mirror. She said, you're not f***ing Brad Pitt. And I was like, thanks, babe. You know what I mean? So then I've come back and I thought, fuck it, I'm doing it, right? So I've got the pictures done, got the agent, then I've got a part in EastEnders, terrorising Alfie Moon, which was quite fun, and trying to chase Ian Bill. And I said to him, I said, you're never going to get away, mate. I will get hold of you. And he's a fucking like marathon runner or something, so I could never catch the little right. And I said to him, I said, you're so fucking quick. He goes, mate, he goes, I do half marathons. He goes, I ride bikes. He said, I'm like super fit. And I was like, you f***er. After that, I did a bit of theatre. I did the Bill. I was just like bumming around. And I remember looking at what I'd earned in my first year of being a thespian. And I'd earned $8,000. And I was like, I made a fucking massive mistake here. My wife is right, as per usual. I'm going to have to find something else to do. Then I started thinking, should I go back into the club? Should I try and buy back the brands I sold? And then I was with a mate of mine, and he said, you should make a movie. And I was like, that's a good idea. I said, would you put some money in? He went, yeah, I'll put some money in. I said, well, I'll put some money in. So I left that meeting thinking, I've got me and my mate, we're going to put some money in. So I rang all my mates and said, for a laugh, let's all put some money in and make a movie. So we raised the money for this film called One Man and His Dog. And the film was a dog, right? But we made it. We still got a bit of our money back. We lost money on the film, but it was literally going to film school, learn how to do it. And then through that film, I met 2 guys called Julian and William Gilby, who were writers, directors, hot up and coming. They were really passionate about everything. And they said, look, we really want to work with you. We're going to cast you in this film. We love you, blah, blah. And I was like, great, fantastic. And I've read some stuff they'd done. I thought, these guys are talented. And then I've a friend of mine who I knew from the club scene back in the day, who I was friends with, phoned me. I said, are you in the film business now? And I went, yeah. I said, I've, done that film. He went, I've seen it. He said, I want to do a film. He said, now I know you can do it, right? He said, how much was that film? And I told him, and he went, look a lot more expensive than what you said. And I said, well, we made it on a low budget, but I said, that's only because that's all we had. And he said, well, I've got an idea. Why don't we do a British Boys in the Hood? I went, and he says, we know all the boys. He goes, we know Kano, we know Miss Dynamite, we know Estelle. We know literally everybody from that scene. Dizzy Rascal, they were all our pals. They all started off with us, right? So he went, we'll get them all in the film, get some proper actors in it as well. I think Jason Fleming was in it. Vass Blackwood, Robbie G, myself, a whole host of other, Billy Murray. There was load of people in it. And it was called Rolling with the Nines. And that film, BAFTA nominated, won Rain Dance. That really was the sort of catalyst for, oh my God, you know, Terry's actually doing proper movies now, right? And that was still a low budget film. But then in between One Man and His Dog and Rolling with the Nines, I went to Ascot races. And I always used to go to Ascot races with my wife. And there used to be this lovely little Italian in the high street called Chow 90s. He's not there now, but we'd always go to the races. And then on the way back, we'd go in there and they used to do these amazing prawns and amazing lobster pasta. So it was like, we've been to the races, we're having the prawns, the lobster pasta, a bottle of wine, then we're going to go home. And we turn up and Carlton Leach is on the door. And he goes, oh, Tell, you know, you're in the film business now, you know, blah, blah. You should turn my book into a film. And I was a bit like, once you know, people know you're in a film business, everybody's got a story. Everyone wants you to make their film. Everyone's got the best book, the best this, the best that. And I said, well, you know, get us a copy of your book and I'll read it. And he gave me a copy of the book and it was called Muscle and it had a picture of him on the front. And I looked at it and I just thought, who's going to want to fucking watch a film about a Dorman? But I thought, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. Read it and see what happens. So read the book and the book was about Carlton being in the ICF, Carlton meeting Tony Tucker and Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe and, you know, looking after Nigel Benn, right? So I thought, you know, it's a good book. It reminded me, if you'd have said to me, pitch me this story, I'd have said it's Football Factory meets Goodfellas, right? So I said to him, I said, look, so I've read the book, we're optioning the book, I'll put the money up to get the writers, and I was thinking in my head, we'll get Julian and William Gilby, blah, blah, blah. So we did it. He spent some time with them. Long story short, we got a bit of money. We went around trying to raise the money for it for 2 years, kept falling over, got a bit of money. Yeah, I'll fund this, I'll fund that. Then the money didn't come through and it didn't happen. And I started to get off and I was thinking, everybody I ask about this film, Rise of the Footsoldier, everyone's like, oh, you know, maybe it should be a TV series. Oh, well, it's not really a football hooligan film. It's more of a gangster film, but it's like two films in one, blah, blah, blah. And I went round and round and round and round for 2 years, banging my head against the wall. And then one day, somebody said, and I can't remember who it was, but they said, there's some fellas over in Essex who are massive West Ham fans, and they will love it because of the West Ham connection, right? So I went, okay, well, you know, let's have a meeting with them. So I met up with them, sent them the script. They love the script. They went, you know, who's going to play the parts? We said, well, at the minute, we got Pat Tate, Craig Febras, me, Tony Tucker, Rana Manuki and Craig Rolfe. We haven't cast, you know, Carlton yet, but that's basically it. Julian William Gilby. And at the time, Rolling with the Nines had come out. So obviously it won the awards, it got nominated for BAFTA. They saw it and they went, how much do you make that film for? And when we told them, they were like, now, these guys are talented. You know, we want to do this film, right? So I was like, great. So the deal we had with them was, you know, we want the rights, and you know, I think they did a deal with Carlton where they paid him, I think it was 10 grand, right, for the rights. So everybody got paid, the film got made. You know, I thought there was something special about that film, right? But with all these films that I've made, every time I make a film, I think it's special. Otherwise, I wouldn't make it, right? And sometimes they're fucking great. Sometimes they're mediocre. Sometimes they're not, right? But that's the excitement of making a film. It's like when you do a podcast, you interview a guest and you think this person's going to blow up, and they don't for whatever reason. Then somebody else blows up and you get 100,000, 500,000 hits, and you go, I didn't see that coming. So it's the same with film. It's just like if everybody knew what the formula was, where you hit it every time, we'd all be doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So the film come out, it was a success. And then, you know, Carlton did some tours off the back of it. And then he thought, well, you know, it's been a success. I'm going to go off and do Rise of the Footsoldier 2 on my own. Even though these guys have funded the film, and I've had to give them all my rights. Everybody's had to give the rights. Now, in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that, because if I'd have kept the rights, obviously I'd have had all of this money from all of these things, right? But then on the flip side, it might have just been one film. So now he's got a crystal ball. So I went into the deal saying, I don't care if you have the rights. I just want this film made. I want to play Tony Tucker. And if it makes money, great. If you never make another film again, great. If you make 10 films, I don't care, because I just wanted to make this film. And if anybody has run around after putting their hard-earned cash into developing an idea, it's like you got planning on a house, right? You put all the money into it and you're waiting for the planning, When you get the planning, you're like, yes, I've got the planning. So getting that film off, they could have bent me over the table and said, we're going to fucking take your pants down and we're going to take your fucking bag, your watch, whatever, to make the film. And I've gone, fucking whatever you want, just take it. I just want to make the film. And that was the thing. But it's like buyer's remorse. So what happened with Carlton was, he obviously thought, I sold my rights too cheap. I shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. I'm doing my own thing now, these people. And obviously you can't do that when you've signed a contract and you've signed legal agreements. So he went off and done a film called Reign of the General, with about what Carlton Leach did next, with all the same actors that were in the other one. But he went off and did it. And then obviously the people that own the rights, which were Connery, they saw what he did and they let him make the film, and then they took it off him and said, you're not fucking doing this, right? So then they all had a big fallout. And then, for probably the last, 5 or 6 years, he's obviously been online, and he's obviously been moaning about, the families not getting their share, moaning about, just basically just trolling the film. And it's it's sad really, because, if you do a deal with somebody, you can't go back to them and go, that deal I did wasn't very good, so I need to change it all now. And, I think because they took the film off him and basically said I was going to sue him, I think, even though it's nothing to do with me, I think it because I, got the film done and I introduced him, it was somehow my fault. And then obviously he's like, you're 45-year-old man playing my mate with a silly wig on and all this. And he got very upset about it online. And you sort of think, mate, it's, if you were that worried about the families, you'd have said in the beginning, we need to make a provision for the families, or we're all going to donate some of their fees to the families. But that wasn't even, it was no interest of the families. You know what I mean? So it was all a little bit silly, really. And, he's had opportunities to be involved in the other films, because they reach out to him and say, oh, Carlton, why don't you come back in one of the films? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And because he's said all this stuff, very hard for him to then pop up in it, or Ricky Arnett pop up in it, and we're all mates, right? Which is silly, really, because if he was sensible about it, every time his character does appear in Rise of the Footsoldier, or there's a story about Carlton in Rise of the Footsoldier, that means more people are going to buy his book, more people are going to go, oh, Carlton Leach. So he's sort of like shooting himself in the foot, which I've never understood.
That is a shame, because the guy who introduced me to it, Hammy, shout out to Hammy, Wildman's cousin, he's a huge fan of yours and a huge fan of Carlton as well.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier on, about success and everyone being successful together. It's a shame that situations end up like this. Would love to get Carlton on to give his story at some point. And how did it change your life then?
I think, again, I think with... I think it changed my life, because I think as an actor, you want to work, and there's lots of actors who will work and do, a little bit of this, an episode of that, a bit of theatre, an advert, they won't work, then they do a little, and it's like stopping and starting. So for me, if I die tomorrow, if I don't ever act again, right? I played an iconic role in an iconic movie that everybody knows, and in 20 years time they're still going to know. So for me, I've achieved. Look, most actors, if you said, what do you want to be? I want to be Tom Cruise, I want to be Brad Pitt, I want to be in Hollywood, I want to be an Oscar winner, for me that'd be amazing. But I don't actually care whether it does happen or not, because I've played an iconic character, people know who I am, I've made a lot of films. But again, some of the films I've made people love, some of them they don't, right? So you can't please everybody all of the time. But when I look back over my 20-year career, I was 10 years in the the club scene, 20 years in the acting and the producing game. I've now started obviously doing the Criminal Connection podcast, which was obviously inspired by seeing all the great work you've done, Sean.
Cheers.
And I just thought, I've never done this before. I'll give it a go. And for me, what's good about having a podcast is I can showcase the things that I want to make. So the characters I want to make films about, the things I want to do stories about, I can obviously showcase them via the podcast. So for me, it becomes another way of making people aware of what I'm doing as a filmmaker, as a content creator. And, I've enjoyed doing it. And again, I think when you start off on any journey, whether you want to do a podcast, whether you want to be an actor, whether you want to make films, whatever you want to do, I actually think, you do it and you never know where it's going to go. And I think that's kind of exciting. But I'm still acting, I'm still producing, I'm still doing everything that I've always been doing. But I think our business has changed massively since COVID, because obviously COVID, everything got shut down. We still managed to make some films, but obviously all the prices went up. And the challenges went up because you had to test everyone for COVID. You were limited on where you could film, what you couldn't film. We've now come out of COVID. We've gone back to some sort of normality. And now, there's the war in Ukraine. There's stuff happening in Israel. There's the writer's strike. There's the actor's strike. And it's just like, there's all these people that don't want to work. There's all these people that want to work from home. And it does feel like it's an odd, I feel like the world at the moment's a kind of weird place. And I'm sort of looking at things and I'm sort of thinking, I don't know how things are going to play out and how things are going to unfold. But what I do know is that people like content. People like to listen, watch, learn. So I think if you're creating something you can share with people, I think you're always going to be employed.
I know what our viewers would like. Terry, I definitely know what our viewers
do. You know what we can't do? You know what we can't do?
What?
AI cannot replace Sean Attwood or Terry Stone. They can try, but it won't be as good as us.
Our viewers, I'm convinced, would like a sample. Are you okay to give a sample?
Sample of what?
So I'll be the guy who gives you the cigarette and says, burn him, and then you lean over with the cigarette and do the face. Can we do that?
Can we do it?
Yeah.
And that's the cigarette, is it?
We've got to improvise.
Okay, now this is like you're putting it on me now.
It's going to be the best bit. Right?
Okay.
Good? We good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. I've got to psych myself up. Burn him, Tony. Burn him, Tony. Burn him, Tony. Burn him, Tony. Burn him, Tony.
You put a bit too much tobacco in there, Sean. Is that a vape? That's one of your vapes. But do you know what? Doing all, the Footsoldier films have obviously got a massive place in my heart. When people say about change your life, I think what it's done it's what I love is I love meeting people that I don't know that watched all the films and they've grown up on it, and the amount of people that send me like videos or pictures of people dressed up as Tony Tucker, or people that have gone, oh, can you send me a video calling me a all this sort of stuff, and you just sort of think, why do you want to video me calling you a why? Do you know what I mean? It's just,
that was my next request.
Anytime, Sean, for you, anything. I'll even put the wig on for you. How's that?
Do you ever contemplate what actually...
Growing my hair and dyeing it blonde? No.
Do you ever contemplate how those guys actually met the end?
Do you know something? What's interesting is, I spoke to lots of people. And look, there's loads of people who say Carlton wasn't really close to them. Carlton was really close to him. Pat Tate was, not really around him all the time. Bernie wasn't. I mean, there's so many conflicting stories about who was really there, who really did this, who really did that. I think the reality is this, right? Everybody, right, wants to embellish their story. Everybody wants to say, I was their best friends. I knew them better than anybody. I was, and I think whatever happens, even if in a year's time they say, these are the people that killed them in the Range Rover, you had Nipper Ellis say his dead dad did it, right? And he confessed to it on his deathbed. You've had Jack Williams and Mickey Steele saying that they're innocent throughout, and you sort of think, well...
Hey, we hope you're enjoying the podcast. This is a word from our sponsor, Shady Rays, and it is the season of giving. Get the perfect gift for that special somebody, yourself or both. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades and quick swap snow goggles that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers an unrivaled product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. Durable frames and world-class optics for all outdoor adventures. And Jen's blonde locks aren't getting tangled.
In the tangle-free nose piece, so I can put it up in my hair like this. No catching.
With an extensive array of styles and colours, you're bound to find the perfect pair of Shady Rays sunglasses. And if you're into winter sports, their quick swap snow lenses move effortlessly between full sun to low light environments. That's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out a very merry deal for the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use the code SHAUN for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. That's shadyrays.com, Sean, SHAUN, for 50% off or 2 more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Link in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast. Cheers.
Even if you were innocent, right, when you've had all your appeals and you know that you're not going to come out of jail, you might as well just put your hands up. Like you said earlier, when you got offered that deal, if you can have the 9.5 years now, or you can have in 50 years. What do you want? You're going to take 9.5 years, right?
Some people, though, if they're innocent, they're not going to bow down. They're going to do the time. There are those people out there, even though if they can get out the next day, I've seen it.
Yeah, but for me, I would just think, you know what? I can sit in here for another 8 years, or I can just come out. Do you know what? F it, I did it.
Linda Calvi, right. She did it. She did the extra time.
But the thing is, I've spoken to law enforcement. I've spoken to all sorts of people, and whatever anybody says, there was an issue between Mick Steele and Jack Williams, and Pat Tate and Tony Tucker. There was an issue, and Mickey Steele was well known for bringing in drugs on his plane, and there is a well-known story that they did some sort of deal, and it didn't. Whatever they sold them wasn't right, and then I don't know if it was Pat or Tony or somebody was going around saying, "We're going to kill you. We're going to iron you out if you don't give us the money." So I think essentially, when that happened, they're in a place where, if you've got and they were lunatics. They were running around beating people up. Craig Rolfe injected that guy and killed him. I mean, they were off key. They weren't. Look.
Which means a lot of people could potentially have done it because they pissed off so many people.
The way they behaved, right? Nipper Ellis, who said he's dead, he shot Pat Tate, right? He actually shot him, right? So that thing in Rise of the Footsoldier, the first one, where I think it's called Jimmy Gerenuk, I think that was maybe loosely based on what happened. But in real life, Nipper Ellis shot Pat Tate through the window. And he wasn't shooting him to maim him, he was shooting him to kill him, right? So you think that was just somebody who he'd had a disagreement with. So you think how many people they've beaten up, terrorised. It could have been 100 people that would, and people probably did want them dead, right? But the reality is, when you actually look at the police reports and all the rest of it, they've said that but bear in mind, now they can actually triangulate your phone to where you're sitting. Back then, it was within a certain radius. So they could say, well, the Essex Boys were killed there, and Mickey Steele and Jack Wham's phones were in the area, but they can't put them at the thing. There was no DNA. They didn't recover the shotgun. They didn't recover the fucking bullets. Obviously, when the police arrest anybody, they can actually get, they can do whatever the DNA is, and they know if you've fired a firearm, because you'll have the gun powder residue on you. There'll be fibres, So the fact that there was no DNA doesn't mean they're innocent, right? But it also doesn't mean they're guilty. But the thing is, no DNA, and, they were in the area. When they got arrested, apparently, they pretended they didn't know where Rettendon was. But then when they went back to them and said, well, your phone's near Rettendon, and they went, oh, yeah, I was picking up a car. So it was like, and I think the problem is, if you are interviewed by the police and you say something, oh, I don't know where it is, and then you go, oh, well, actually, no, I do know, I was picking up a car. It's like, well, do you know where it is or not, mate? Do you know what I mean? So I think that didn't help them. And look, nobody else has been arrested for it. Loads of people have been questioned, loads of people have been interviewed, there's been loads of suspects, but they are the only people who've actually been accused of it, have been convicted of it and gone to jail for it. So for me, I've spoken to John Whames, and John Whames has said, his brother's innocent, I didn't do it, and the truth's going to come out, right? So they're obviously campaigning for justice. There was recently a programme on Sky where I think there was two. There was one about the Essex Boys that had Carlton and Dave Courtney and everybody talking about it. And then I think there was another one which these police guys said, let's try and find out, let's go through it all again, let's see if it's right, and they all come up, there was a theory that a professional hitman did it from East London. There was a theory that maybe Niparellis' dead dad did it. There was all these other theories, but again, they didn't really lead anywhere. So again, that's what makes the Essex Boys and these stories. I mean, there's been 20 or 30 books, 20 or 30 films, and they're going to keep going because it's like, it's never going to be solved. All the time. If Jack Whames and Mickey Steele said, we did it, people go, oh, we know we did it now. So there's no mystery, there's no conspiracy theory, there's no I wonder what happened, But I think because the only people who know what happened were in that Range Rover, that's what makes it compelling, because everybody wishes they could just be there and say, fucking tell us who did it. Do you know what I mean? And nobody's ever going to know.
Yeah, we interviewed an ex-cop who's based in Essex, Andy Coombs, recently, and he said he thought it looked like a professional hit. That's what he said.
But there was no DNA. There was no cartridges. There was no gun recovered. So whoever did it knew what they was doing. And if Jack Whames and Mickey Steele had done it, well, they're not that fucking clever that they can shoot a gun, get rid of the stuff. I mean, I don't know how quickly they were arrested after the incident. But Darren Nichols, who obviously was, they called him the Supergrass, but, he said he was there. He said, this is what happened. And, some people said, well, he said that to get out of it because he was implicated in it. Some people said, he did it because he was a grass. Some people said he did it because the police wanted to fit him up. I mean, who knows? But the way I look at it, I just find it hard to believe. I know people will say anything to get themselves out of a problem, but just having somebody just making up a load of books to get themselves out of trouble, and the police, I just can't get my head around why the police would put two innocent men in jail for 20 years or however long it is, unless they thought it was them. Do you know what I mean? And if there was any shadow of doubt, or if there was any new evidence that come to light, they would have been released sooner, I would have thought. But,
So in your book, you talk about the tragic death of Leah Betts and how that created a kind of a backlash.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with that particular thing, it was a club that was controlled by the Essex Boys. Bernard Mahoney was on the door there. Apparently, it was the Essex Boys drugs that she consumed that killed her. And I think at that point, there was a lot of stuff in the papers about people dying on ecstasy, and people worried about people taking these ecstasy tablets and blah blah blah. But I think that was a turning point, because I think when she died, because she died so tragically, and because her father was a police officer, I think the whole world were like, oh my God, And then obviously when they started, it was like, we got to stop these drug dealers peddling this shit, And for me, it's sort of like, and I always thought, if, they always talk about the war on drugs, right? They've never won the war on drugs yet, because you can buy drugs anywhere, right? So you sort of think, well, you've not stopped it. You haven't won the war on it. You arrest people every now and again and put them in jail, but you don't actually stop it, because the next person comes along and then somebody else comes along. So for me, it's like, if I was in government, I would say, we're not winning the war on drugs. We've been trying to do it for 30 years or 40 years, however long it is. Let's legalise it. Let's tax it, and let's make sure that, people can actually buy it, and it's safe. Right? And people, you'd have to, like, if you was going to have some sort of treatment, right, at the doctor, or you was going to take something, they would actually test your body, and they'd say to you, you can't take this because it's going to fucking kill you, right? People, are told they need an operation, and they're told, if you have this operation, you could die. A lot of people say, I'm not having that operation. So it's the same with drugs. If you could be tested and say, look, I want to take this, but I want to make sure that it's going to be okay, they can say, well, we don't think you should take it, but if you take it in these quantities and it's, we've tested it, then at least what you're taking has been tested and it's controlled. And obviously you can monitor what people are taking. So people aren't going to go out and take in 10 and die of an overdose, because they're not going to be able to buy 10. You know what I mean? So I think at that point, I was thinking, the only way to solve this is and obviously the police, when I think the reason it was such a big news story was because it was a young girl on her 18th birthday, and her father's a police. She comes from a great family, and that's happened. So, my sort of heart went out to her family, but it was a massive impact on the club scene. I think the police really did step it up. They really did want to stop it, I think they were. Listen, if you were doing anything in that world at that point, there was a good chance that they was going to come for you and nick you, So I'm sure a lot of drug dealers got arrested. I'm sure a lot of the police focused on taking them off the streets and arresting these people.
Along those lines, then, do you think that the police could have some elements of the police could have took matters into their own hand to eliminate the Essex Boys? No. I mean,
look, when we did Rise of the Footsoldier, there was 3 conspiracy theories. There was Jack and Mickey did it, the police did it, or these gangsters did it. Which one was the real ending? And it was just done to cause controversy. It wasn't done because that's what we thought happened. But I think it's an easy conspiracy theory. You've taken his daughter away, so they're going to come for you and they're going to take you away. But I'm sure the police and the army, in countries all around the world, will take matters into their own hands, as would the government. If somebody was being a fucking nuisance, I'm sure they would either put them in jail for a very long time, or maybe they will have an accident. But I don't think, it's sort of like, if they had done it, I think they would have just done it. I don't think Mickey Still and Jack Williams would have been in the area. I think they would have just been killed, and you'd have been like, it'd be who done it. You'd never know. Do you know what I mean? And that would have made it even more interesting, because then people would go, well, who killed the Essex Boys? That would have been an ongoing thing forever. But, so I personally don't think there's any merit in that thing. Some people will disagree. Some people will say, oh, they definitely did it. But no, I don't think they did.
Terry, let's finish this podcast showing respect for Dave Courtney. Yeah. R.I.P. Dave. He was friends of both of us. You've got to have a funny Dave Courtney story.
Got hundreds, but the one that stood out the most was when I told you that story earlier about going to Manchester in the G-Mix, right? I went up there in a minibus, and there was me, there's a guy called Adam Saint, there was Brendan, there was Dave Courtney, there was about 20 of us on this minibus, and we went up to Manchester, and we had this real laugh, and I don't know why, right? But we all got talking, and we were having a laugh about EastEnders, and there was a storyline where, do you remember the hairdresser Felix? So there was a guy called Felix the hairdresser, and something happened to him where he went missing in the show, right? And obviously Steve McFadden, who plays Phil Mitchell, was a really good friend of Dave Courtney. So we thought it'd be really funny, right, to as we drove to Manchester, to pull over in this minibus, and just random people. So you haven't seen Felix, have you? Right, and they'd be like, Felix, yeah, Felix the hairdresser. You know, we're looking for him. We think Phil Mitchell's had him away, right? And the guy's like, what are you on about, right? And all night we was in this rave going up people going, you haven't seen Felix, have you? And it was just stupid. If you'd have been with us, you'd have found it hilarious, right? But we thought it was really funny. And then my birthday's in January, and I had a birthday party, and Dave bought Felix the hairdresser from EastEnders and Steve McFadden to my birthday party, and it was just fucking hilarious. And we had pictures of I had this like bib on, and he was trying to cut me because I had hair then. Right? But that was funny. But that was Dave. You know what I mean? It was sort of like you go out, you have a laugh, you forget about it, and then he said, "I've got a surprise for you." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And he goes, "I'm coming to your birthday party with some special guests." And he walked in with Phil and Felix, you know what I mean? I was like, "You found him?" And I said, "Felix, you coming back, mate?" You know what I mean? But he was actually a good laugh. And we actually got him, he was dancing on the dance floor. He was busting some moves.
Did you ever go to any of Dave's parties at Camelot?
Do you know what? I didn't. I when he first moved into that house, I went I went round his house a couple of times. But he always said, "Oh, I'm doing a party, I'm doing this." But I think he had like a dungeon in his thing, and he used to stream it live on the internet. And he always used to say, "I'll come out to be funny." And I was like, "Mate, I'm married with kids. I'm not, if I say to my wife, what are you doing on Saturday night? I'm going to Dave's dungeon, and I don't know what's going to happen in the dungeon, but they're going to be streaming on the internet." She's going to be like, "You ain't going to any fucking dungeons with Dave Courtney." So I think I didn't go to any of his parties, but someone said to me they were really good. You know, he said he had all sorts of DJs, celebrities, the Weird and Wonderful, Dorman, all sorts. It was just literally like a party house from Friday to Sunday. You know, so.
James was Dave's cameraman for many years and filmed some bizarre situations.
Bizarre situations. So, mate, I was right not going there. but honestly, when I heard the news, I was
Such a shame.
quite shocked because for me, Dave was always the life and the soul of the party. Every time I used to see him, either at a film premiere or an event, he'd always be like, "Oh boy, how you doing?" Blah blah.
Yeah.
And he'd always be funny. We'd always have a laugh, and I'd always just think, this guy, he was always like a big kid. He always wanted to fuck about. He always wanted to have a laugh. He always wanted to make everyone happy. And he's the sort of guy you'd ring him up and say, "Oh, Dave, I really want to meet this guy, or can you help me with this?" And he'd do it. You know what I mean? And he was never out for himself. He never. From having a laugh with him at a night out in Manchester at a garage night, to then him turn up with these two people we've been having a laugh about, and all my mates were rolling up with laughter, going, "I can't believe you got Phil Mitchell and Felix the hairdresser at your birthday party," after we was talking about him 2 months ago. But again, that was Dave. But I mean, he was always a practical joker. I know one time he went to court and he turned up in court in a court jester's outfit.
And punched a cup.
But what I mean, it's just like, but he was a showman. I know a lot of people refer to him as a celebrity gangster, but I think what he did with his life is, I think he just embraced it. He just went, "Look, You know, I'm a celebrity gangster. I'm Dodgy Dave. I've got my cigar. I've got my knuckle duster. I'm in a few movies. You know, come around my house and have a party. You know, he was. I think if you like partying, you like going out and having a laugh, you probably wouldn't have found a better person to do it with. You know, so. Rest in peace, Dave.
Yeah, we filmed the reception he gave Michael Franzese. That was really, he went out above and beyond. Michael was blown away. And you watched Michael's show as well, didn't you?
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. Was it? Which one was that? Was that?
Michael went to Dave's house. And
really?
we filmed it, yeah, and he had all of his mates there, and the cars and the guns, and it was something else, yeah. All the showcase cars and
amazing.
I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah, I'll have to
check it out. Yeah. What did you think of the show?
Which one?
Franzese's show.
Franzese is brilliant. I mean, I met Michael personally, and we had a little chat, and I hosted. I went to the one with Sir Trevor McDonald, and I think the one in Brighton. I think there was I'm trying to think of his name. One of the Ant Middleton or one of them, you know, SAS guys that was on the telly was meant to be doing it. And then I think he broke his arm or something and he couldn't do it. And then I got a call saying, "Oh, do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Love to." And I went and did it with him. But we had a great laugh. And I think with Michael, what I love about him is he's just straight talker, you know, he's educated. You know, when you talk to people, sometimes you speak to people that have got into crime and they're not particularly bright, but then others are, and he's one of those guys that you could put him in any environment and he can have a conversation, and there's something really personable about him, and he tells great stories. And I was a fan. You know, I hadn't met him before that, but I'd been to the event at the Grosvenor and heard him speak, and heard Sir Trevor McDonald interview him, and literally I was just sitting there going, wow, you know, what a great story. And then to actually then spend some time with him in Brighton and then be able to do it again. But, you know, so I think they went downhill. They went from Sir Trevor McDonald to Terry Stone, so they went downhill after that. But I think Michael, he's come back and you're hosting it.
I'm hosting again. Thank you to Kaz for having me host last year, and thank you to Ella for inviting me to host Franzese in 2024.
Amazing.
Check it out if you viewers want to come along and watch that. Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely.
Brilliant. So
what's in the store for you, Terry?
Well, I've got some crazy stuff that I'm doing at the minute. I'm putting together a UK sort of rap film, a little bit like Top Boy. It's called Tales from the Trap.
I love Top Boy.
So we've got a script for that, and we've got a really good director called Nines, who's a famous rapper. So we're going to be putting that together. We've got a film called King of Crime, which is about John Palmer, which would be unbelievable. The only thing that slowed us down on that was obviously all these strikes. Because on something like that, you can't make it cheap, so you need a big actor to carry that film. And we're doing a film about the rise and fall of the Shah of Iran, which sounds crazy, but it's a great story. If you've seen Argo, obviously I know it's Ben Affleck, and that was a big success, but we're actually putting that together at the moment. And so on the production side, we've got these 3 movies that we want to make. We've got a host of TV series that we want to do, which we've kind of developed. And the next step now is to start pitching them out. But again, you know, the thing that sort of held us back, we had COVID, which meant we couldn't go to America, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. And then obviously all these strikes started, the war started. So what we've found really, I'd say from probably 2020 to 23, so the last 3 years, the whole world has been in sort of turmoil. So we've still been getting things done. We're still making movies. We're doing a podcast. We're developing stuff. You know, we've got a lot of the productivity hasn't slowed down at all. But actually getting things done, and you know, when you're making a film, so many moving parts. And you know, obviously with the Shah, we spoke to people in Abu Dhabi about filming it in Abu Dhabi, and they basically said, you know, we can't really have the film here because if we put money into it, you know, Ryan might look at it as, you know, we're trying to say, oh, look, the last regime was really good. you know, so they politely, but they're very. I think Abu Dhabi and Dubai. They always sort of, they're neutral. You know, they want people to go there and spend money. They don't want to take any political stance. They don't want to alienate anybody. So for them, that wasn't for them. But we've got other options in the Middle East, which we've had one person come back and say, you can film here. We're going to go there in January and have a look at locations. So I think that'll be happening next year. I think acting wise, you know, what happens in the world that I'm in is you'll get a call and they'll say, oh, can you do this audition tomorrow? So you don't really ever know what you're doing. And for me, I'm selective on what I do now because, you know, I played the lead in Rise of the Footsoldier Origins, Finny Jones, Craig Fairbrass, Keith Allen. So I worked with some amazing actors, Roland Manukian, George Russo, you know, so when you play a lead in a movie and that film had a wide theatrical release, Amazon put it out, it was in the top 5 on Amazon, you sort of think, as an actor, I've now done a lead role in a movie that's been a success, and it went out in America through Hulu, 60 million people. So although I'm not Brad Pitt yet, I look at it and I just think, you know, for me to go from there, you know, what do I do next? And the thing is, you know, I get offered all the time, oh, we're doing a film, do you want to be in it? I've got a little part. It's like, mate, you know, I'm not interested in doing a little part. If a new filmmaker's coming up and they want to do a short film or they want to work with me and they've got a budget, I don't mind helping those people because I want them to get up so that they can actually start making films, because I've always been independent and I've always wanted to help people get a start in whatever they're doing. So I've always wanted to help people. So I always help people trying to get their independent films off. But as an actor, actually, if you rang me up and said, oh, I'm doing a film, if it's not a major role, and I mean, look, if you said, oh, Brad Pitt's in it, there's only one scene, I'd say yes, right? But if it's doing a low budget film with, you know, actors that aren't well known, unless I'm playing a main role in it, I don't really want to do it, and I'd rather not do it because, you know, it's that thing where you become a victim of your own success. So my agent will put me up for stuff now, and then I'll be like, wow, this is really good. And it's like, who am I going up against? Oh, Stephen Graham, Sean Bean. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get this, am I? And I said, yeah, but they're ringing you to fucking audition for it. So it's great. You know, you're getting the call, and it doesn't matter if you get it. The fact that they're thinking of you is good enough. So for me,
it shows you're in the league if they're thinking of you.
And you know, there was another film that I did after that called The Last Heist. I don't know if you've seen that, but that was a supernatural bank robbery film, like really like something that I never. But I read the script and I thought this is a really interesting movie. So what happened with that? That came out the year after Origins. So Origins come out in September 21, and The Last Heist come out November 2022. They re-released. So yeah, The Last Heist come out in November 2022, and we had the Rise of the Footsoldier computer game come out in January 23. They re-released the original Rise of the Footsoldier. They'd done this remixed, remastered, modern day version of it alongside the game in January. So that came out, which was great. And it was funny because when I went and watched that movie on a big screen, bear in mind, once you've seen it 2 or 3 times, you forget about it. So I probably haven't seen that film for, it's got to be 13 years. So I actually sat in the cinema and watched that film, and I was like, this is actually pretty fucking good. And I actually watched, and you know, as an actor, when you watch yourself on the screen, you always go, oh, I don't really like watching myself. But when I watched it, I thought, actually, I did a fucking good job in that. So I look back on it now and I think, wow, you know, now I know why that film has been so good and so strong and why it's still resonating now. And the fact they've remixed and remastered it and added a bit to it and re-released it in the cinema, I thought was amazing. So that was at the beginning of this year. And then and then The Last Heist, you know, is now on Amazon Prime. So anybody in the UK who wants to watch it that hasn't seen it can watch it for free. Thank me later. Then we had Rise of the Footsoldier Vengeance, which I'm not in, but I was one of the producers on. That came out in September. That went out big cinema release. It's now available on PVOD, so people can, watch it and buy it to keep at home. And then, as I said, next year we're working on those 3 films. So I think 2024 is going to be a really good year. I've got a few other interests which are unfilm related. Good pal of mine, I've known 20 years, set up a property company in Dubai. Opened the office there in September. I'm a director of his company, which is very interesting. I've always loved Dubai, but never really thought about doing any business over there, but I had an opportunity with him. So obviously I took that. And then a friend of mine has launched a vodka brand called NE10. I don't know if you've seen that.
I saw it on one of your podcasts.
Yeah. So the NE10, if you go on a periodic table and you're a geek, it means neon vodka, basically. But that's fastest growing independent premium vodka in the country. We've got massive things happening with it at the moment. It's going out into America. It's going out into Europe. We're getting the license for Dubai, so it's going to go out in the Middle East. So I've got a few other strings to my bow, but all of this has come through acting, filmmaking, and the opportunities come. There's lots of opportunities out there, and you can say no to them. But I like to say yes to all of them, and because some of them aren't going to work, but some of them are going to be great. So I think I always have an open mind, and like yourself, Sean, you've written a lot of books, you're doing a podcast, you're now doing a tour with Michael Franzese, and it's great, and it's exciting to be doing something you enjoy,
Definitely, and your story's extremely inspirational. But can you call me in the Tony Tucker voice before we finish?
Sean Attwood, you stupid, no good, wrong and
all of Terry's links, socials, podcast will be in the description box below this video. So go down, support his work, check the book out. Audiobook's brilliant. There's so much more in the audiobook.
Yeah, we've got a King of Clubs. So anybody that wants to listen to it or buy a copy, it's on Amazon, it's on Apple, it's everywhere. Yeah,
you can stalk him on Instagram for quotes. and,
do you know what? I should actually do a page called Coach. I should actually come up muggy pigs, dirty, wrong and
just Valentine's Day, Christmas.
So you could actually Christmas. So what you could do? This is a good idea, right? You could actually have a page, right? And you could have quotes of the day, and you could just. I think it's a good idea. I mean, you might get taken off Instagram, but I think
do you realise how much muting Joe's going to have to do? He's shaking his head.
What can't you say? I thought you were allowed to say. Can't you say? It's a term of endearment where I come from.
What a journey. Give us a hug.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And
Chet Sandhu's book is finally available worldwide on Amazon. He's one of our most viral podcast guests ever. The book is called Self-Made, Dues Paid, an Asian kid who became an international drug smuggling gangster. Do you want to read some of the back, Jen?
Yeah, go the blurb. In 1999, Chet Sandhu was arrested at gunpoint in Alicante Airport for smuggling the largest quantity of illicit pharmaceutical drugs in Spanish history. Interesting. Overnight, he went from living in the shadows of the Costa del Crime's underworld to being labelled a notorious supervillain in the international press. Incarcerated alongside murderers, rapists, and terrorists in a super maximum security wing, he had to navigate a world of murderous knife fights, prison breaks, drug taking, and high-stake power plays. Good bedtime read.
In Self-Made, Dues Paid, learn how a British-born Asian kid with disabilities, raised in a corner shop, emerged as a protector of his family from racist thieves and hooligans. Be prepared to be entertained, informed, and offended by Chet's no-holes-barred account of raves, drugs, bodybuilding, entering the fashion industry. Did you know that he dated Kylie Minogue and Naomi Campbell?
Latest interview.
Working the doors and life in one of the world's deadliest places to be incarcerated. If you enjoyed Chet's podcast series with us, there's a lot more detail in the book. Check it out. Worldwide on Amazon, ebook, paperback, and audiobook.
I kill you! A knife and a cosh and all that, like, yeah! And he's looking at me, and we went white, and then he's gone, like.
What is it about a tough guy that fascinates us?
Imagine I'm hearing that, I'm thinking I'm not going down today. If I go down today, I'm dead.
We're bringing you the very best of our interviews with Britain's hardest men.
They made the mistake of bringing billy clubs, iron bars, and knives to a gunfight.
No Rules Fighter Bash, Stephen the Devil French, and my best friend, Wild Man. Over 2 hours of terrifying tales of punch-ups, stabbings.
That's what happens in that world. You leave people long enough, they get enough rope training themselves.
Attempted murders and exceptional all-round hardness.